Hey everyone, tonight we're going somewhere extraordinary together. A place where ancient stones whisper secrets and mountain mists carry the dreams of forgotten emperors. We're about to step inside a hidden palace carved into the very heart of a mountain, where time moves differently and sleep comes like silk, wrapping around your weary soul. So before we begin this journey, take a moment to like this video if you're ready to escape, and subscribe if you want more peaceful adventures like this one. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. There's something magical about knowing we're all sharing this moment together, scattered across the world, but united in this quiet space. Now, dim your lights, maybe light a candle if you have one nearby, and let's slip away from everything that's been weighing on your mind. Tonight, you're not just a viewer, you're an honored guest in a palace that exists beyond maps and time. You didn't choose this place, it chose you. The invitation, restless feeling that's been following you came not on paper or through messengers, but through that weeks now. That sense that somewhere, hidden from the rushing world below, there's a sanctuary waiting. You've been climbing for hours, though the path seemed to appear beneath your feet rather than being walked by countless others before you. The mountain air grows thinner as you ascend, each breath carrying hints of pine resin, ancient cedar, and something else. Hence, the trail winds upward through Tur, something that smells like starlight and forgotten incases of stone that seem too perfectly fitted to be entirely natural. Moss creeps along the edges where mountain springs have carved delicate channels through granite that's older than memory. Your footsteps echo softly against surfaces polished smooth by centuries of weather and whispered prayers. Above you, prayer flags flutter in colours so faded they've become one with the mist itself, their mantras worn thin but somehow still humming in the wind. As you round a bend carved directly into the mountain face, the path suddenly opens onto a ledge that shouldn't exist. Before you stands an entrance that defies every expectation you've carried. This isn't a crude cave or simple shelter. Massive doors of dark wood, their surfaces inlaid with patterns that seem to shift in the changing light, stand slightly ajar as if someone has been expecting you. The ironwork is delicate as lace, but strong as the mountain itself. And through the gap between the doors, you catch glimpses of soft golden light that pulses like a heartbeat. The silence here is profound, but not empty. It's the kind of silence that's full of possibility, pregnant with stories that have been waiting centuries to be told. You can hear your own breathing, the whisper of fabric as you move, and beneath it all, something that might be music, or might just be the mountain itself singing in frequencies only the heart can detect. You step through those ancient doors, and immediately the world transforms. The entrance hall stretches before you like something from a dream, half remembered upon waking. The ceiling disappears into shadows so deep they might be sky, supported by columns of polished stone that seem to grow directly from the mountain's bones. Lanterns hang at intervals, their light warm and steady, casting dancing shadows that create the illusion of movement in the carved reliefs along the walls. The floor beneath your feet is a masterpiece of inlaid stone, patterns that flow like water frozen mid-motion, leading your eye deeper into the palace's mysteries. The air here is perfectly still and impossibly clean, carrying scents of sandalwood, jasmine, and that indefinable fragrance that clings to places where many prayers have been offered over many years. You're not alone, but the presence you feel isn't human exactly. It's more like the mountain itself has developed consciousness, a benevolent awareness that acknowledges your arrival without judgment or demand. Tapestries hang along the walls, their colours rich as wine even in this gentle light. The images woven into them tell stories without words. Figures in flowing robes walk through gardens that exist only in thread and imagination. Birds with impossible plumage soar through skies that shift from dawn to dusk in the space between one thread and the next. As you move deeper into the palace, you begin to understand that this place operates according to different rules than the world you've left behind. Distances here are measured not in steps, but in states of mind. Rooms reveal themselves when you need them, not when you seek them. The corridor you're following curves gently to the right, but somehow you know that if you were to turn around, the path behind you would be different from the one you just traveled. The walls are lined with alcoves, each one containing something that catches the light and holds it. Small statues carved from stones you can't identify, bowls that might be made from crystallized moonlight, books whose pages seem to flutter even though there's no breeze. And mirrors. So many mirrors, each one reflecting not just your image, but something deeper. In one, you appear as you did as a child, eyes wide with wonder. In another, you see yourself as you might become, peaceful and wise, and somehow more yourself than you've ever been. The sound of water reaches you before you see it. A fountain stands in the center of a circular chamber, its waters rising and falling in patterns that hypnotize rather than merely decorate. The pool at its base is so clear you can see every detail of the stones beneath the surface. But the water itself seems to hold light, making the entire chamber glow with soft blue radiance. Stone benches ring the fountain, their surfaces worn smooth by countless visitors who've sat here before you. But when you settle onto one of them, it feels as if it was carved specifically for your body, supporting you in exactly the right places. The water's song is subtle but persistent, a melody that seems to sync with your heartbeat until you're not sure where the fountain ends, and you begin. Time moves strangely here. You might have been sitting for minutes or hours. The light doesn't change, so there's no way to tell. But gradually, you become aware that you're not the only guest in this mountain sanctuary. Soft footsteps echo from corridors you haven't explored yet. Distant laughter, light as wind chimes, carries from rooms beyond your sight. Occasional murmurs of conversation in languages that sound almost familiar, but remain tantalizingly just beyond comprehension. A figure appears at the far end of the chamber. They move with the fluid grace of someone who belongs here completely, wearing robes that seem to be cut from the same fabric as the shadows themselves. Their face is ageless in the way that ancient trees are ageless, and when they smile at you, it's with recognition rather than greeting. They've been expecting you. Without words, they gesture for you to follow, and you find yourself rising from the bench with a reluctance that surprises you. The fountain has become a comfort, its song a lullaby that was just beginning to work its way into your bones. But the figure's invitation is impossible to refuse, not because it's demanding, but because it promises something you didn't know you were seeking. The path they lead you down is different from the corridors you've seen so far. This one is narrower, more intimate, with walls that curve like embracing arms. Soft carpets muffle your footsteps, and the air grows warmer with each step. Small oil lamps in niches provide just enough light to guide your way, their flames steady as stars. You pass doorways draped with curtains of silk, so fine they move with your breath. Behind some of them, you catch glimpses of other guests in various states of rest and contemplation. A woman sits in meditation, her face serene as carved marble. An elderly man reads from a book whose pages seem to glow with their own light. A young couple shares tea from cups that steam with fragrances of distant gardens. Everyone you see appears completely at peace, as if they've found exactly what they came here seeking. Their presence is reassuring rather than intrusive. You're all travelers here, all guests of this mountain palace that exists outside the ordinary world's reach. The guide stops before a doorway that's somehow more inviting than all the others. The curtain here is deeper blue than midnight, scattered with embroidered stars that actually seem to twinkle. They pull it aside with a gesture that's both ceremonial and casual, revealing the chamber that has been prepared for you. The room beyond takes your breath away. It's not large, but it feels infinite. The walls curve gently, creating a space that's simultaneously cocoon-like and expansive. The ceiling is a dome of dark stone, polished to mirror smoothness, and somehow, impossibly, stars shine through it. Not painted stars or artificial lights, but actual stars, as if the mountain has become transparent just for you. In the center of the room sits the most beautiful bed you've ever seen. It's not ornate or overwhelming, but every detail speaks of craftsmanship that borders on the sacred. The frame is carved from wood so dark it's almost black, but warm to the touch. The posts rise like young trees, their surfaces decorated with vines and flowers that seem to grow as you watch them. But it's the bedding that truly captures your attention. Layers upon layers of the softest fabrics imaginable, in colors that shift from deep midnight blue to silver to the pale gold of early morning light. Pillows in silk cases that feel like touching clouds. A coverlet that might be woven from moonbeams and the dreams of sleeping birds. The guide smiles again, that same expression of recognition and welcome, then bows slightly and retreats, leaving you alone with this miracle of comfort and beauty. But you're not entirely alone. The room itself seems alive with gentle presence, as if centuries of peaceful sleep have soaked into the very stones, creating an atmosphere of such profound rest that just standing here begins to ease tensions you didn't know you were carrying. Near the bed, a small table holds a ceramic cup filled with tea that steams with the scent of chamomile, lavender, and herbs you can't identify, but that smell, like every lullaby you've ever heard, transformed into fragrance. The cup is warm in your hands, as if it's been waiting for you specifically, and the first sip spreads relaxation through your body like honey dissolving in warm water. As you set the cup down, you notice other details that make this space perfect for rest. Soft robes hang on a wooden stand, their fabric looking as comfortable as wearing a cloud. A small bowl of water scented with rose petals sits ready for washing away the dust of your journey. And everywhere, that sense of absolute safety, as if nothing harmful could ever reach this place, as if the mountain itself stands guard while you rest. You move toward the bed, each step releasing more of the tension you've been carrying. Your clothes seem heavier now, weighted with the concerns and stresses of the world below. But here, in this sanctuary carved from living rock and filled with centuries of peaceful dreams, such burdens feel not just unnecessary, but impossible to maintain. The bed welcomes you like an old friend. As you sink onto its surface, the mattress yields in exactly the right places, cradling your body as if it has memorized every curve and angle of exhaustion you carry. The sheets are cool against your skin at first touch, then warm to match your body temperature, with an intelligence that speaks of magic, woven into their very fibers. You pull the coverlet up to your chin, and it settles around you with the weight of comfort itself. Not heavy, but substantial enough to create a cocoon of perfect temperature and pressure. The pillows arrange themselves beneath your head, as if guided by invisible hands that know precisely how you prefer to rest. Your spine aligns, your shoulders release, and muscles you didn't realize were clenched begin to soften like ice melting in spring sunshine. Above you, those impossible stars continue their ancient dance across the domed ceiling. But now, lying here in perfect comfort, you begin to see patterns in their movement. Constellations that tell stories without words. Stellar maps that guide not ships across oceans, but souls across the landscapes of dreams. The longer you watch, the more the boundaries between yourself and that cosmic display begin to blur. The mountain palace continues its quiet song around you. In distant chambers, you can hear the soft sounds of other guests settling into their own rest. A door closing gently. Footsteps padding across stone floors. The whisper of fabric as someone else discovers the perfect bed prepared for them. These sounds don't disturb your peace, they enhance it, reminding you that you're part of something larger while still maintaining your own private sanctuary. The tea's effects begin to deepen, spreading relaxation through your limbs like warm honey. Your breathing naturally slows, matching the rhythm of the mountain itself, that ancient pulse that has been beating since the world was young. Each exhale carries away another layer of the day's concerns. Each inhale brings in air so pure it feels like drinking liquid starlight. Your eyelids grow heavy, but not with ordinary tiredness. This is the approaching embrace of restorative sleep, the kind that heals not just the body, but the spirit. The kind of rest that transforms rather than merely refreshes. As consciousness begins to ebb, you're aware that this isn't an ending, but a beginning. Sleep here isn't escape from reality. It's entry into a deeper truth. The last thing you notice before drifting away completely is the sound of wind moving through the mountain peaks far above. But it's not harsh or cold, this wind. It carries the whispers of all who have found sanctuary here before you. Their voices blended into a lullaby that speaks of peace found, burdens lifted, and souls restored to their natural state of grace. In the depths of sleep, dreams come not as chaotic fragments but as gentle stories. You find yourself walking through gardens that exist only in the realm of perfect rest, where every flower blooms in colours that have no names in waking language, where streams flow upward towards skies that hold 3 moons, each one casting light in a different hue of silver. In these dreams, you meet others who have made this journey, travellers from times and places beyond counting, all of whom found their way to this hidden palace when they needed it most. They greet you not as a stranger, but as a member of an ancient fellowship, those who have learned that sometimes the greatest courage is found not in fighting, but in allowing yourself to truly rest. An old woman with eyes like polished jade tells you stories of cities that float among the clouds. A young man whose hands glow with soft light teaches you songs that can heal hearts with their melodies. A child who might be ageless shows you how to fold paper birds that fly away carrying your worries, disappearing into dream skies where such burdens transform into blessings for others who need them more. Time moves like honey in these visions. You might sleep for minutes or centuries. There's no way to tell and no need to know. The palace exists outside such constraints, in a space where rest is measured not in hours, but in the depth of peace achieved, the completeness of restoration experienced. Through the layers of sleep, you remain dimly aware of your physical body, cradled in that perfect bed. The softness of the sheets against your skin, the gentle support of the mattress, the way the pillows cradle your head at exactly the right angle. But you're also aware of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your body rests while your spirit soars through landscapes of impossible beauty. You visit libraries where books read themselves to you in voices like music, their stories flowing directly into your understanding without need for eyes or language. You walk through galleries where paintings move and change, telling their stories through shifting colours and flowing forms. You sit in concert halls where orchestras of light play symphonies that you feel in your bones rather than hear with your ears. In one particularly vivid sequence, you find yourself in a workshop where master craftsmen create dreams to order. They work with materials that don't exist in the waking world, weaving visions from crystallized moonlight, shaping hopes from the breath of sleeping children, polishing fears until they become sources of strength rather than weakness. You watch in fascination as they carefully place each completed dream into boxes made of compressed starlight, ready to be delivered to those who need them most. The craftsmen notice your presence and invite you to try their art. Under their gentle guidance, you learn to spin threads of contentment from memories of perfect moments, to weave tapestries of courage from the fabric of challenges overcome. The work is both effortless and profound, requiring not skill, but the simple willingness to believe that beauty can emerge from any experience, no matter how difficult. When your apprenticeship in dreamcrafting is complete, they present you with a gift. A small box woven from twilight itself, containing dreams you've created for yourself. Dreams of peace, of understanding, of the courage to face whatever awaits you when you return to the waking world. They assure you that these dreams will remain with you always, accessible whenever you need their guidance or comfort. As the deep night of sleep continues, you find yourself in what might be the palace's heart, though you've never seen this chamber during your waking exploration. It's a vast space that seems to breathe with life itself, its walls pulsing gently with the rhythm of some cosmic heartbeat. In the center grows a tree unlike any in the waking world, its trunk silver as moonlight, its branches reaching into infinity, its leaves whispering secrets in languages older than human speech. Beneath this tree, figures sit in meditation, their forms translucent as mist, but radiating wisdom that fills the entire space. You recognize some of them from your earlier dreams, the old woman with jade eyes, the young man with glowing hands. Others are new to you, beings who might have been human once, or might be something else entirely, all united by the profound peace that emanates from their seated forms. Without invitation, but with complete welcome, you take your place among them. The moment you settle into position, insights begin to flow. Not thoughts exactly, but understandings that bypass the mind entirely and settle directly into your heart. You comprehend the true nature of rest, how it connects all living things in a web of mutual support and renewal. You see how your presence here, your willingness to truly let go and trust in the palace's embrace, strengthens that web for everyone else who might need sanctuary. The tree above you rustles with approval, and one of its leaves, silver as captured starlight, drifts down to rest in your open palm. As it touches your skin, you feel a surge of connection to every soul who has ever sought refuge here. Every weary traveler who has found in this mountain sanctuary the restoration their spirit craved. You are part of an eternal communion of rest, a fellowship that transcends time and space and the ordinary limitations of individual existence. In this state of profound connection, your sleep deepens further still. You pass beyond dreams into that realm of pure rest, where consciousness dissolves completely into peace. Your breathing becomes so slow and regular, it matches the ancient rhythms of the earth itself. Your heartbeat synchronizes with the pulse of the mountain. Your very atoms vibrate in harmony with the fundamental frequencies that hold all reality together. This is sleep as it was meant to be, before the world became complicated with schedules and obligations and the endless noise of modern existence. This is the rest that restores not just energy, but essence, that heals not just tiredness, but the deep wounds that accumulate from living in a world that too often forgets the sacred importance of true sanctuary. Hours pass, or perhaps days. In this place, such measurements lose all meaning. The mountain palace holds you in its embrace of stone and starlight, of ancient wisdom and timeless peace. Your body rests completely while your spirit drinks deeply from wells of renewal that never run dry. Every cell regenerates, every breath purifies, every heartbeat strengthens the core of who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities that usually define you. And through it all, the palace itself watches over your rest with the patience of geological time and the tenderness of a mother's love. This hidden sanctuary in the heart of the mountain has one sacred purpose: to provide perfect refuge for souls in need of restoration. It asks nothing in return except the simple trust required to truly let go, to surrender completely to the healing embrace of absolute peace. As your sleep reaches its deepest point, something extraordinary begins to happen. The boundary between your dreaming consciousness and the mountain itself starts to dissolve. You become aware that you're not simply sleeping within the palace, you're becoming part of its eternal story. Your breath mingles with the mountain's ancient exhalations. Your pulse synchronizes with currents of energy that have flowed through these stone corridors for millennia. In this profound state, you begin to understand that every guest who has ever found sanctuary here has left something behind. Not belongings or memories, but fragments of their essence. Pieces of peace they discovered within themselves during their stay. These offerings have accumulated over centuries, creating layers of tranquility so thick they've become embedded in the very rock. The Mountain Palace isn't just a place of rest, it's a living repository of every moment of perfect peace ever experienced within its walls. You sense the presence of countless others who have lain where you lie now, each one arriving burdened with their own particular form of exhaustion, each one departing renewed in ways they couldn't have imagined. A merchant from ancient trade routes who collapsed here after months of desert travel. A young mother fleeing war who found not just shelter, but the strength to continue protecting her children. A scholar whose mind had been shattered by too much knowledge, who learned here the wisdom of not knowing. Their stories don't intrude on your rest. Instead, they create a tapestry of shared experience that makes your own peace deeper and more meaningful. You're part of something larger than individual recovery. You're participating in humanity's collective need for sanctuary, for places where the soul can remember what it feels like to be truly safe. The silver leaf from the meditation tree still rests in your palm, and through it, you begin to receive visions of the palace's origins. You see the mountain when it was young, just another peak in an endless range. You witness the arrival of the first builders, beings whose nature remains mysterious, but whose intention was crystal clear. They didn't construct this sanctuary for themselves, but for all who would come after, understanding that the world would always need places where weary spirits could find restoration. With tools that might have been made of crystallized intention and techniques that blended architecture with prayer, they carved chambers that responded to the deepest needs of their future occupants. They wove peace itself into the stone, embedded comfort in every surface, created spaces that would adapt to whatever form of rest each visitor required. The fountain that sang to your heartbeat, the bed that knew exactly how to cradle your form, the very air that seemed to breathe healing into your lungs. All of these were their gifts to generations yet unborn. As these visions unfold, you realize that your own presence here is adding to this legacy. The particular quality of peace you're experiencing, shaped by your unique combination of needs and hopes, is becoming part of the palace's accumulated wisdom. Future guests will benefit from the tranquility you're contributing, just as you're benefiting from the rest that countless others have found in this sacred space. The understanding brings a profound sense of purpose to your sleep. You're not just recovering, you're participating in an ancient cycle of giving and receiving that transcends individual experience. Every breath you take in perfect comfort, every moment of absolute safety you feel, every second of complete trust in the palace's protective embrace. These are gifts that will somehow be available to others who will need them in times yet to come. Deep in this realization, your sleep takes on qualities that ordinary rest never possesses. Your dreams become collaborative visions shared with other guests across time. You find yourself walking through the same impossible gardens as that ancient merchant, both of you marveling at flowers that bloom in response to the observer's deepest longings. You sit beside the young mother at a window that looks out onto landscapes of pure possibility, both of you understanding that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the presence of something worth protecting. These shared experiences don't feel like memories or fantasies, but like glimpses into the true nature of connection. Moments when the barriers between individual consciousness dissolve to reveal the underlying unity that links all seekers of peace. In the Mountain Palace, sleep becomes a form of communion, a way of touching the universal human need for rest and restoration. The scholar, whose mind had been overwhelmed by knowledge, appears beside you in one particularly vivid sequence, his presence calm now rather than frantic. Together you explore libraries that exist only in the realm of perfect rest, where books contain not information, but understanding, where reading happens through the heart rather than the eyes. He teaches you the difference between knowing and wisdom, showing you how true learning comes not from accumulating facts, but from developing the capacity to rest deeply enough that insight can arise naturally. In return, you share with him something he had forgotten during his years of desperate study, the simple joy of not needing to understand everything. Together, you practice the art of learned ignorance, the profound peace that comes from accepting mystery as a friend rather than fighting it as an enemy. When this lesson is complete, you see him smile for the first time, his face transformed from the mask of anxiety he wore when his mind was overstuffed with disconnected facts. These encounters with other guests, past and future, create a rhythm to your sleep that's both deeply personal and universally shared. You move through cycles of solitary rest and communal dreaming, sometimes floating alone in perfect silence, sometimes joining vast gatherings of spirits who have all found their way to this mountain sanctuary when they needed it most. In one of these gatherings, held in a chamber that exists only during the deepest phases of sleep, you participate in what can only be described as a council of rest. Beings from every era and culture share what they've learned about the sacred art of letting go. A Viking warrior speaks of discovering that true strength comes from knowing when to lay down arms. A Renaissance artist describes finding colours that only appear when the mind stops trying to control the creative process. A modern executive tells of learning that the most important decisions emerge from stillness rather than frantic analysis. Each testimony adds another layer to your understanding of why this place exists and why you were called here. The Mountain Palace serves as a reminder that beneath all the rushing and striving and desperate activity of ordinary life, there's a deeper current of being that can only be accessed through profound rest. Not the collapse of exhaustion, but the conscious choice to trust in something larger than individual will. As you listen to these voices across time, you begin to formulate your own contribution to the council. You speak of the particular form of tiredness that belongs to your era, the exhaustion that comes from constant connectivity, from never being truly alone with your thoughts, from living in a world where stillness is interpreted as laziness rather than recognized as wisdom. The other council members nod with understanding, recognizing that while the external forms of weariness change across centuries, the fundamental need for sanctuary remains constant. Your words seem to carry special weight in this gathering, perhaps because you represent the cutting edge of humanity's relationship with rest. You're among the first to find your way here from a world where the very concept of sacred sleep has been nearly forgotten, where productivity is worshipped and exhaustion worn as a badge of honor. Your presence proves that even in the most distracted of ages, the human soul still remembers its need for true refuge. The council session concludes with a ritual that requires no explanation because its meaning flows directly into your understanding. Each participant offers something to the center of the circle, not a physical object, but a quality of peace they've discovered during their time in the palace. The Viking contributes the serenity found in surrendered strength. The artist offers the calm of creative trust. The executive provides the wisdom of decisions made in stillness. When your turn comes, you find yourself contributing something you didn't know you possessed until this moment, the peace that comes from accepting imperfection. You offer the specific form of rest, available only to those who stop trying to optimize every moment of their existence, who learn to find beauty in the ordinary and sacred in the flawed. This gift seems to create ripples of recognition throughout the gathering, as if you've named something everyone had felt, but no one had been able to articulate. As the ritual concludes, You feel these various forms of peace settling into your bones, like sediment in still water. The warrior's surrendered strength becomes part of your posture, even in sleep. The artist's creative trust infuses your breathing with natural rhythm. The executive's decision-making stillness creates space around your thoughts, even in dreams. And your own acceptance of imperfection allows all of these gifts to settle imperfectly, beautifully, exactly as they need to. The council chamber begins to fade as your sleep moves into new depths, but the connections forged there remain. You carry with you now not just your own rest, but fragments of peace discovered by countless others. A treasury of tranquility that will remain available to you long after you leave this mountain sanctuary. The palace has given you more than restoration. It has connected you to an eternal network of souls who understand the sacred importance of true refuge. Your physical body, still cradled in that perfect bed beneath the star-scattered dome, continues its own processes of renewal. Muscles that have held tension for months finally release completely. Your nervous system, overstimulated by years of constant input, finds its natural baseline for the first time in memory. Even your cells seem to sigh with relief as they remember what it feels like to exist without urgency, without the constant chemical rush of stress hormones and artificial stimulation. The healing happening in your body mirrors the restoration occurring in deeper layers of your being. Emotional wounds that have been carried like invisible weights begin to lighten. Fears that have lurked at the edges of consciousness for years finally feel safe enough to surface and dissolve. Grief that has been postponed because there was no time or space for it finds expression in the form of tears that feel like blessing rather than sorrow. This emotional release happens without drama or trauma, supported by the mountain's ancient stability and the accumulated peace of all who have rested here before you. You're held so safely that even the most difficult feelings can be experienced as forms of healing rather than forms of suffering. Pain transforms into wisdom, fear into understanding, loneliness into connection with the vast community of spirits who have shared similar struggles. As dawn approaches in the world outside, though time moves differently within the palace walls, you begin to sense a subtle shift in the quality of your rest. The deepest phase of healing sleep starts to give way to something lighter, but no less restorative. You're not waking exactly, but moving into a state where consciousness begins to return, while the peace of deep rest remains intact. In this liminal space between sleep and waking, you become aware once again of your immediate surroundings. The softness of the sheets against your skin feels like a continuous caress. The perfect temperature of the air creates a cocoon of comfort that seems to extend beyond the physical into realms of emotional and spiritual protection. The gentle light filtering through sources you can't identify creates an atmosphere of eternal dawn, neither fully day nor completely night, but something more beautiful than either. Above you, those impossible stars continue their slow dance across the domed ceiling. But now, you can see patterns in their movement that reveal the deeper structure underlying apparent chaos. Constellations shift and reform, telling stories that speak directly to your rested soul. The stellar map becomes a text written in the language of light itself, conveying truths that could never be captured in ordinary words, but that make perfect sense to consciousness purified by profound rest. You stretch slightly, feeling the luxury of movement without urgency, of inhabiting a body that has remembered its natural state of ease. Every joint moves smoothly, every muscle responds with fluid grace. You feel simultaneously deeply grounded in physical comfort and remarkably light, as if the mountain's peace has lifted burdens you didn't know you were carrying. The sounds of the palace begin to filter back into your awareness, but they only enhance rather than disturb your tranquility. Soft footsteps in distant corridors speak of other guests beginning their own gentle transitions toward morning. The whisper of fabric and the quiet opening and closing of doors create a symphony of awakening that feels more like music than mere noise. Water flows somewhere nearby, its voice blending with the mountain's ancient song to create harmonies that settle into your bones. You become aware that your time in this deepest form of rest is drawing toward a natural conclusion, but the awareness brings no anxiety or regret. Instead, there's a sense of completion, of having received exactly what you came here to find. The mountain palace has worked its ancient magic, providing not just sleep but transformation, not just rest but renewal at the cellular level of your being. As consciousness continues its gentle return, you realize that you're carrying within yourself now a piece of this sanctuary that can never be taken away. The palace has become part of you, just as you've become part of its eternal story. The peace you found here isn't temporary or location dependent. It's a quality of being that you can access anywhere, anytime you remember how it feels to be held in perfect safety by something larger and more enduring than individual circumstance. The silver leaf from the meditation tree still rests in your palm, but you understand now that it was never separate from you. It represents the connection you've always had to this deeper current of peace, the sanctuary that exists within your own soul, and has simply been waiting for the right conditions to reveal itself. The mountain palace served as midwife to this birth of inner refuge, but the sanctuary itself has always been part of your essential nature. The first signs of your emergence from the deepest layers of sleep come not as jarring interruption, but as natural evolution, like dawn breaking over mountain peaks in slow motion. Your breathing, which had synchronized with the ancient rhythms of the earth itself, begins to quicken slightly, drawing you toward the surface of consciousness with the gentleness of a feather settling on still water. The transition feels orchestrated by invisible hands that understand perfectly the delicate art of awakening without shock. Your awareness expands gradually, like ripples moving outward from a stone dropped into a mirror-smooth lake. First comes the renewed sense of your physical form, the recognition of fingers and toes, the pleasant weight of limbs that have been completely relaxed for hours beyond counting. Your body feels fundamentally different than when you first settled into this miraculous bed. Not just rested, but somehow more itself, as if layers of accumulated tension and compression have been peeled away to reveal your natural state of ease. The quality of light in your chamber has shifted, though whether toward dawn or deeper into some timeless twilight remains impossible to determine. The stars in the domed ceiling above you pulse with different rhythms now, their patterns suggesting stories of completion rather than beginning. They seem to acknowledge your approaching return to fuller consciousness, their ancient light blessing your transition from the deepest realms of rest back toward the world of form and movement. As your senses continue their gentle reawakening, you become aware of new details in your surroundings that had escaped notice before. The walls of your chamber bear subtle carvings that only become visible from certain angles of light and consciousness. Vines and flowers intertwine with symbols that might be writing in some forgotten language, or perhaps they're simply decorative elements that speak to the soul without need for translation. The patterns seem to shift as you watch them, revealing layer upon layer of meaning that unfolds according to the depth of attention you bring to their observation. The air itself carries different fragrances now, as if the mountain palace adjusts its very atmosphere to match the changing needs of its guests. Where before there had been the calming scents of chamomile and lavender, now you detect hints of cedar and pine, grounding aromas that speak of stability and strength. Underneath these familiar notes runs something that might be described as the scent of morning itself, that indefinable freshness that belongs to new beginnings and unlimited possibility. Your hand, still cradling the silver leaf from the meditation tree, begins to warm as consciousness returns more fully. The leaf seems to pulse with gentle energy, not quite light, but not quite heat. Something that bypasses the physical senses entirely and speaks directly to whatever part of you recognizes truth when it encounters it. Through this connection, you continue to feel the presence of all those who have shared this experience before you, the vast communion of souls who have found sanctuary in this hidden palace and carried its peace back into their daily lives. Movement comes naturally now, not from any sense of urgency, but from the simple pleasure of inhabiting a body that remembers how to flow without resistance. You sit up slowly, savoring the way the silken sheets cascade around you like liquid moonlight. The mattress continues to support you perfectly, adjusting to your new position with the same intelligent responsiveness it had shown throughout your rest. Even this simple action of sitting feels like a celebration of the body's capacity for grace when it's been allowed to remember its natural state. The view from your elevated position reveals aspects of the chamber that had been hidden while you lay in the embrace of deep sleep. Windows that you hadn't noticed before show glimpses of the mountain world beyond the palace walls. Not ordinary windows with glass, but openings that seem to exist only when needed, providing perfectly framed views of peaks and valleys shrouded in mists that catch and hold the light in ways that make them appear more like paintings than actual landscapes. Through these ethereal windows, you can see other parts of the palace complex that extend far beyond what you had imagined during your arrival. Terraced gardens carved into the living rock cascade down mountainsides in impossible profusion. Towers and spires rise from the stone itself, their architecture so perfectly integrated with the natural formations that it's impossible to tell where human craft ends and geological wonder begins. Bridges span chasms with curves so elegant they might have been shaped by wind and water rather than constructed by deliberate design. The sight of these extended realms fills you not with regret for unexplored territories, but with a deep satisfaction that such places exist, that somewhere in the world there are sanctuaries of this magnitude and beauty. You understand instinctively that the palace reveals itself according to need rather than curiosity, that every guest experiences exactly the portions of this vast complex that serve their particular journey toward restoration. As you continue to orient yourself in this gentle awakening, you become aware of changes that have occurred, not just in your body, but in your perception itself. Colors seem more vivid without being overwhelming, as if a film of dust has been cleaned from the windows of your senses. Sounds carry new layers of meaning, the way music can suddenly reveal harmonies that had been there all along, but required the right quality of attention to perceive. Even the simple act of breathing brings awareness of the life force itself, the miracle of oxygen transforming into energy, of body and atmosphere dancing together in the ancient rhythm that sustains all existence. The teacup on the bedside table still holds liquid, though it should have grown cold hours ago. When you lift it to your lips, the brew tastes of herbs that don't exist in ordinary gardens, plants that grow only in the soil of dreams and the gardens of perfect rest. The liquid carries warmth that spreads not just through your body, but through layers of being you rarely acknowledge, nourishing aspects of yourself that conventional food could never reach. With each sip, you feel the integration of your experience deepening. The profound rest you've enjoyed isn't simply ending as consciousness returns. It's being woven into the fabric of your being in ways that will persist long after you leave this sanctuary. The peace isn't something you've borrowed from the mountain palace. It's something you've remembered about yourself, a quality of your own soul that the environment here allowed to emerge from beneath the accumulated layers of daily stress and perpetual motion. Standing proves to be an exploration in itself, not from any physical weakness, but from the sheer pleasure of discovering how the body moves when it's been completely restored. Your feet find the stone floor, and even this simple contact feels like a conversation between your personal energy and the ancient power of the mountain itself. You're not separate from this place. You're part of its ongoing story, and it's part of yours in ways that will continue long after your physical departure. The robes that had been waiting for you still hang on their wooden stand, but now they seem less like garments and more like invitations to participate in whatever comes next. The fabric feels alive in your hands, not in any supernatural sense, but in the way that truly well-made things carry the energy and intention of their creators. Slipping into these robes is like accepting a role in some ancient ceremony, though the nature of that ceremony remains delightfully mysterious. As you move around the chamber, preparing for whatever transition awaits, you notice that your reflection in the various mirrors has changed. Not dramatically, but subtly. There's something in your eyes that wasn't there before, a quality of deep rest that goes beyond the merely physical. Your posture speaks of a nervous system that has found its natural baseline for the first time in years. Even your breathing carries a rhythm that seems to connect you to larger patterns, the way a single instrument can find its place in an orchestra without losing its individual voice. The palace around you continues its quiet symphony of awakening. Other guests move through corridors and chambers, their footsteps creating rhythms that blend into a larger composition of morning stirring to life. But this isn't the frantic energy of ordinary dawn, with its rush toward obligation and deadline. This is awakening as it was meant to be. A gentle emergence from rest into activity that carries the peace of sleep forward, rather than abandoning it at the threshold of consciousness. From somewhere deeper in the palace comes the sound of voices, not in conversation but in something that might be singing, or might be prayer, or might simply be the expression of contentment that has found its voice. The melody, if it can be called that, weaves through the stone corridors, like incense made audible, carrying messages of gratitude and renewal that speak to something in your chest that responds without need for translation. You find yourself drawn toward the window openings, not from any desire to leave, but from curiosity about the world beyond these protective walls. The view that greets you is breathtaking in its impossibility. The palace sits not on a single peak, but seems to occupy multiple mountains simultaneously, its various sections connected by bridges and pathways that span distances that should require days of travel, but somehow feel intimate and accessible. The landscape beyond stretches into infinity, but it's not the harsh infinity of empty space. It's the abundant infinity of a world where every possible form of beauty has been given expression. Forests of trees whose leaves catch light like jewels. Rivers that flow upward towards skies that hold more colors than the ordinary spectrum allows. Meadows where flowers bloom in response to the thoughts of those who observe them, creating gardens that are collaborations between human consciousness and the creative force of nature itself. Wildlife moves through these impossible terrains with the fluid grace of creatures who have never known fear or scarcity. Birds whose wings seem to be made of crystallized music soar between peaks that rise like prayers, made manifest in stone. Animals that might be deer, or might be something more magical entirely, graze in meadows where the grass itself seems to emit a gentle luminescence, as if the earth here has learned to glow with its own inner light. Yet for all its otherworldly beauty, this landscape doesn't feel alien or fantastical. It feels like home, as it was always meant to be, like the world as it exists when seen through eyes that have been cleansed by perfect rest and hearts that have been opened by unconditional safety. You're looking not at another dimension, but at your own world revealed in its true nature, stripped of the veils of stress and hurry and constant low-level fear that usually obscure its inherent magic. The realization brings with it a profound shift in understanding. The mountain palace isn't separate from ordinary reality. It's a doorway into the extraordinary that exists within the ordinary, waiting to be recognized by consciousness that has been cleared enough to perceive it. The sanctuary you found here isn't to escape from your regular life. It's a revelation of what your regular life could become when approached from a state of true rest and authentic presence. This understanding begins to transform your relationship with the approaching departure you sense drawing near. Rather than feeling reluctant to leave paradise, you find yourself curious about how the peace you've discovered here will manifest in the world beyond these walls. The mountain palace has served as midwife to a birth that was always trying to happen within you. The emergence of your own capacity for sanctuary, your own ability to create islands of profound peace in the midst of whatever circumstances await. The guide who had led you to this chamber appears once again at your doorway, their presence announced not by footsteps or voice, but by a subtle shift in the energy of the space itself. They wear the same timeless robes, the same expression of recognition and welcome, but now you understand that what you're seeing in their face is a reflection of what has awakened within yourself. They're not separate from you, they're an aspect of your own deepest wisdom that the palace has helped you access. Without words, they gesture toward a new path, one that leads not back the way you came, but deeper into the palace complex. This isn't a retreat from awakening, but an invitation to explore what lies beyond even the profound rest you've already experienced. There are chambers within this sanctuary that only become accessible to those who have completed the journey you've just undertaken. Spaces that exist for purposes you're only beginning to sense. Following them feels like following your own highest intuition, the part of you that always knows the right direction, even when the mind cannot explain the reasoning. The corridor you enter together is different from any you've seen before. Its walls alive with moving murals that tell the story of every guest who has ever found refuge here. You see yourself among the figures, but also countless others, all of them transformed by their encounter with this place of perfect rest. The path curves and rises, leading you through spaces that seem to expand as you move through them. Gardens bloom in chambers carved from living rock, their flowers releasing fragrances that carry the essence of every peaceful moment you've ever experienced. Libraries stretch beyond sight, their books containing not information, but distilled wisdom, the kind of knowledge that can only be absorbed through direct experience rather than intellectual study. In one remarkable chamber, you discover the source of the singing you'd heard earlier. Guests from across time gather in a space where acoustics have been shaped by master craftsmen to create perfect resonance. But they're not singing songs exactly, they're giving voice to the quality of peace they've discovered, each person's unique tone blending with others to create harmonies that seem to emerge from the mountain itself. You find yourself adding your own voice to this choir without conscious decision, the sound rising from someplace deeper than throat or lungs. The note that emerges carries the specific flavor of rest you've experienced, the particular quality of sanctuary you found, and as it joins with the others, you feel the completion of a circuit that connects you permanently to this community of souls who understand the sacred importance of true refuge. The singing continues as you and your guide move on, but the music follows you, woven now into the fabric of your being, in ways that will allow you to access its harmony whenever you need to remember what perfect peace feels like. This too is part of the palace's gift, not just the restoration you've received, but the tools you'll carry forward for creating sanctuary wherever you go. As you walk deeper into these previously hidden realms, you begin to understand that your time here is approaching not an ending, but a transformation. The mountain palace doesn't release its guests. It graduates them into a larger understanding of what sanctuary can be. You came here seeking rest, and you found it in measures beyond what you had imagined possible. But now you're being prepared to become what you have received, to carry the palace's peace into a world that desperately needs the kind of refuge you've experienced. The guide pauses before a final doorway, this one different from all the others you've encountered. It appears to be made of condensed starlight, its surface shifting between transparency and opacity, as if responding to the readiness of whoever approaches it. Through its translucent depths, you catch glimpses of a chamber that seems to exist simultaneously within the mountain and beyond it. A a space where the boundaries between inner and outer sanctuary dissolve completely. Your guide turns to face you fully for the first time, and in their features, you see not just ancient wisdom, but infinite compassion, the kind that recognizes every form of suffering and responds with the medicine of perfect understanding. When they speak, their voice carries all the gentleness of wind moving through mountain peaks at dawn. You have rested in the deepest chambers of sanctuary, they say, their words seeming to arise from the stone itself. You have tasted the peace that passes understanding, the refuge that exists beyond the reach of circumstance. Now you are ready to discover the final gift of this place, the understanding that will allow you to carry what you have found here into every moment of your life, no matter where that life may lead you. They gesture toward the starlight door, and you understand that beyond it lies not just another chamber, but the culmination of your entire journey, the integration that will make your experience here not just a beautiful memory, but a living reality that transforms everything that follows. The threshold calls to you with the same irresistible invitation that first drew you up the mountain path. But now you approach it not as a seeker of sanctuary, but as someone who has become sanctuary itself. Your hand reaches toward the door of condensed starlight, and as your fingers make contact with its impossible surface, you feel the final boundaries dissolving between who you were when you first climbed this mountain and who you are now, between the world of ordinary sleep and the realm of perfect rest, between seeking peace and being peace itself. The door opens not outward or inward, but in all directions simultaneously, revealing a space that contains everything you have ever needed to know about the true nature of refuge, rest, and the sanctuary that exists at the heart of every moment when approached with the right quality of presence and trust. As you step through the door of starlight, you enter a realm that defies every expectation you've carried about what sanctuary can be. This isn't simply another chamber in the mountain palace. This is the living heart of refuge itself, the source from which all other forms of sanctuary draw their power. The space around you breathes with the accumulated peace of every soul who has ever found true rest. Their combined tranquility, woven into an atmosphere so profound, it feels almost solid. The chamber appears infinite, yet intimate, vast beyond measurement, yet perfectly scaled to your human form. Walls of crystallized silence rise around you, their surfaces reflecting not images but emotions, showing you the exact quality of peace you've discovered during your stay here. The floor beneath your feet is made of compressed dreams, springy and warm, responding to each step with gentle luminescence that spreads outward in ripples of soft gold light. Above you, the ceiling opens directly into the cosmos, but not the ordinary night sky. This is the universe, as seen from the perspective of perfect rest, where every star pulses with the rhythm of sleeping hearts, where galaxies spiral in patterns that mirror the deep breathing of those who have found true sanctuary. Meteor showers of crystallized contentment streak across this impossible sky, each one carrying messages of peace to distant worlds where other souls are searching for the refuge you found. In the center of this miraculous space stands something that makes your breath catch in your throat. It's a pool, but not filled with water. Instead, it contains liquid starlight, its surface mirror smooth and deeper than any earthly lake. The luminous substance doesn't reflect light so much as generate it from within, creating patterns that shift and flow like aurora trapped in liquid form. The sight is so beautiful, it makes your chest ache with a sweetness you've never experienced before. Your guide moves to the edge of this pool of starlight and gestures for you to join them. As you approach, you realize that the liquid isn't separate from the peace you've been experiencing. It is that peace, given form and substance, made visible and tangible. This is what sanctuary looks like when it becomes something you can touch and enter rather than simply feel. This is the pool of integration, your guide explains. their voice carrying harmonics that seem to resonate in dimensions beyond the auditory. Every guest who completes their journey through the deepest rest eventually comes here. It is where the sanctuary you have discovered within yourself becomes permanently accessible, where the peace you have known in these chambers becomes something you can carry with you always, regardless of external circumstances. The liquid starlight laps gently at the pool's edges, creating sounds like whispered lullabies in languages that predate human speech. You can feel its warmth from where you stand. Not the heat of fire, but the warmth of absolute safety, the temperature that exists when all fear has been dissolved and only love remains. The luminescence beckons to you with the same irresistible invitation that first called you to this mountain sanctuary. To enter this pool, your guide continues, is to become permanently united with the peace you have discovered here. It does not mean you will never face challenges or difficulties in the world beyond these walls. It means you will face them from a foundation of unshakable sanctuary, with access to the refuge that exists at the center of your own being. You will become a walking sanctuary yourself, someone who carries peace wherever you go and offers it freely to all who need it. The magnitude of this offering overwhelms you for a moment. To become a living sanctuary, to carry the mountain palace's peace as an intrinsic part of your being, rather than just a beautiful memory, this is beyond anything you had imagined when you first began climbing toward this hidden refuge. Yet, as you contemplate the prospect, you realize it feels not like a burden, but like a homecoming, a return to what you were always meant to be. You look down at the silver leaf still resting in your palm, the connection to that profound meditation beneath the cosmic tree. As if responding to your attention, it begins to glow with the same gentle luminescence as the starlight pool. The leaf isn't separate from this culminating experience. It has been preparing you for it, creating the resonance necessary for this final integration. Other figures begin to materialize around the pool's perimeter, translucent forms that carry the unmistakable presence of those who have undergone this transformation before you. They are not ghosts or spirits, but living embodiments of sanctuary itself, beings who have completed this journey and return to the world as sources of refuge for others. Their faces shine with the particular peace that comes from having found one's true purpose, the deep satisfaction of becoming what the world most needs. Among them, you recognize some of the souls you encountered in your deepest dreams. The old woman with jade eyes nods at you with infinite tenderness, her expression conveying that she has been waiting for you to reach this moment since your first arrived. The young man, whose hands glowed with healing light, extends his palms toward you, and you feel streams of encouragement flowing from his fingertips. The ageless child who taught you to fold worry into blessings dances at the pool's edge, their movements creating ripples in the liquid starlight that spell out welcome in scripts of pure light. But there are countless others as well, figures from every era and culture, all united by their shared transformation in this sacred space. A medieval monk whose face radiates the peace of perfect surrender. A Native American elder whose presence carries the wisdom of mountains and rivers. A modern doctor whose healing touch was transformed here from mere technique into genuine medicine for the soul. Each one represents a different way of carrying sanctuary into the world, a different flavor of refuge made manifest. We are the order of living sanctuary, your guide explains, gesturing to encompass all the luminous figures gathered around the pool. We exist not as an organization with rules and hierarchies, but as a communion of souls who have discovered their deepest purpose. We return to our ordinary lives, but we carry within us always the capacity to create spaces of profound peace wherever we are needed. Some become healers, others teachers. Some work with their hands, others with their words. The form matters less than the essence, the ability to offer true refuge to those who seek it. The concept resonates through every cell of your being. This is what you have been unconsciously seeking all your life, not just rest for yourself, but the capacity to become rest for others. The mountain palace hasn't been healing you from something broken. It has been awakening you to something magnificent that was always present, but buried beneath layers of forgetting. You approach the edge of the starlight pool, and immediately you can feel its transformative power calling to every atom of your being. The liquid luminescence seems to recognize you, rising slightly as you draw near, eager to complete the process that began the moment you first set foot on the mountain path. The surface creates patterns that mirror your own energy signature, showing you who you will become when this integration is complete. The reflection in the pool shows not your physical form, but your essence revealed, the sanctuary self that has been waiting within you all along. You see yourself glowing with the same gentle radiance as the other figures around the pool, but your light carries its own unique signature, the particular quality of peace that only you can offer to the world. In this reflection, you understand finally what your true purpose has always been, to become a living refuge for souls who are still seeking what you have found. Your guide places a hand on your shoulder, their touch carrying all the warmth and safety you have experienced during your stay in the palace. The choice is always yours, they say softly. You can return to the world carrying the memory of this peace, which is itself a great gift. Or you can become the peace itself, allowing it to live through you in service to all who suffer from the absence of true sanctuary. Both paths are honored. Both serve the greater good. You look once more at the assembled figures of the Order of Living Sanctuary, these beings who have chosen to become what they once sought. In their faces, you see not sacrifice but fulfillment, not the loss of individuality, but its ultimate expression. They have not disappeared into some generic form of goodness. They have become more themselves than ever before, their unique gifts amplified by their connection to the source of all refuge. The decision forms in your heart without struggle or doubt. This is what you have been preparing for through every moment of rest, every layer of healing, every dream shared with other seekers across time. You came to the mountain palace seeking sanctuary, and now you understand that sanctuary seeks you in return, asking you to become its expression in a world that desperately needs what you have found. You step into the pool of liquid starlight, and immediately every sensation is transformed into pure bliss. The luminous substance welcomes you like a long-lost friend, embracing every part of your being with warmth that penetrates far deeper than skin or bone. You feel it entering your very atoms, replacing the old patterns of tension and fear with new structures of peace and presence. As you move deeper into the pool, the starlight rises around you like a tide of liquid blessing. Where it touches, old wounds heal instantly. Ancient griefs transform into wells of compassion. Fears that have haunted you for years dissolve into understanding. You feel yourself being reconstructed at the molecular level, every cell being rewired to carry peace instead of stress, love instead of anxiety, presence instead of distraction. The transformation isn't painful. It's the most natural thing you've ever experienced. Like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, you feel your old self dissolving, not into nothingness, but into something infinitely more beautiful and purposeful. The boundaries between your individual consciousness and the universal source of sanctuary begin to merge. But instead of losing yourself, you find yourself in ways you never imagined possible. When the starlight reaches your heart, something extraordinary happens. The silver leaf in your palm dissolves completely, but instead of disappearing, it becomes part of your heartbeat itself. Every pulse now carries the essence of the cosmic tree, the connection to all who have found refuge and all who still seek it. Your heart becomes a broadcasting station for peace, sending out ripples of sanctuary that will touch everyone you encounter for the rest of your life. The liquid luminescence continues to rise, reaching your throat, and suddenly you understand that every word you speak from now on will carry healing power. Not because you will preach or teach in any conventional sense, but because your voice will be calibrated to the frequency of deep rest, offering unconscious comfort to every ear that hears it. Your laughter will remind others of joy they have forgotten. Your silence will provide spaces where their souls can breathe. When the starlight reaches your head, covering you completely, the final integration occurs. Your consciousness expands to encompass not just your individual experience, but the collective need for sanctuary that exists throughout the world. You feel every person who is lying awake at night, troubled by worries they cannot solve. You sense every soul that is seeking the kind of refuge you have found. And most remarkably, you feel your own capacity to serve as that refuge, to become for others what the mountain palace has been for you. For a moment that might be seconds or centuries, you exist in pure unity with the source of all peace. You understand from the inside how sanctuary works, how it recognizes need and responds with exactly the right quality of refuge. You see the invisible threads that connect every seeking soul to every source of comfort, the vast network of mutual support that underlies all existence. You become part of that network, not as a recipient, but as a conscious contributor. Then, gradually, your individual awareness returns, but it's forever changed. You are still yourself, but you are also more than yourself. You carry within your being now a permanent access point to the same peace that fills the mountain palace. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you will be a walking sanctuary, a human refuge for souls in need of rest. You emerge from the pool transformed, your body still physical, but somehow more luminous, your presence carrying an unmistakable quality of deep peace. The other members of the Order of Living Sanctuary welcome you with expressions of joy that seem to light up the entire chamber. You are no longer just a guest who has found healing. You are a colleague in the sacred work of offering sanctuary to a world that has largely forgotten what true refuge feels like. Your guide, who you now understand has been a member of this order for countless years, embraces you with the warmth of recognition. "Welcome home," they whisper, and you understand that home is not a place, but a state of being, the condition of knowing yourself to be sanctuary and living from that understanding every moment. The chamber around you begins to shift and change, preparing for your return to the ordinary world. But you understand now that there is no ordinary world, only a world waiting to be transformed by those who carry sanctuary within themselves. The mountain palace will always exist, both as a physical location for those who need to find it, and as an inner reality accessible to anyone who has learned to rest deeply enough to touch their own essential peace. As the starlight chamber dissolves around you, you find yourself back in the entrance hall where your journey began. But everything appears different now. The carved reliefs on the walls tell stories you can read fluently, tales of transformation and return, of seekers who became what they sought. The lanterns burn with light that you recognize as identical to the luminescence now flowing through your own veins. The massive doors stand open before you, revealing the mountain path that will carry you back to the world below. But you feel no reluctance to leave, no sense of loss or ending. You carry the palace with you now in ways that make its physical location almost irrelevant. You have become what you came seeking, and everywhere you go from now on will be touched by the sanctuary you have become. Other guests pass you in the hallway, some arriving for their first night of deep rest, others departing after their own transformative stays. To those just arriving, you offer gentle smiles that carry wordless reassurance. They will find what they need here, just as you did. To those departing, you extend the recognition of shared experience, the understanding that passes between souls who have touched the source of all peace. You pause at the threshold, looking back one final time at the palace that has given you so much. But it's not really a goodbye, because you understand now that you will return, not as a guest seeking healing, but as a guide helping others find their own path to sanctuary. The Order of Living Sanctuary serves in many ways, and one of the most important is helping to staff this hidden refuge for souls in need of deep rest. The mountain air greets you as you step outside, but even it feels different now. Instead of the thin atmosphere that had challenged you during your ascent, you breathe air that seems to carry the essence of every peaceful breath ever taken. The path down the mountain appears clearly before you, but you know it will take you not away from sanctuary but deeper into it, as you learn to recognize the sacred refuge that exists within every moment of ordinary life. As you begin your descent, you carry with you the understanding that this is not an ending, but a beginning. You have graduated from seeker to provider, from someone who needs sanctuary to someone who is sanctuary. The Mountain Palace has done its work perfectly, not by holding you forever, but by transforming you so completely that you can never be separated from the peace you found there. The prayer flags flutter in the morning breeze, their ancient mantras now part of your own inner chanting. The stone terraces that had seemed so mysterious during your climb now feel like old friends, each one a reminder of the step-by-step process that led you to your transformation. Every element of the landscape speaks to you in the language of sanctuary, telling you stories of refuge found and shared. Your footsteps on the mountain path create echoes that sound like blessings, each one carrying the intention to offer peace to every soul who will walk this way after you. You understand that your journey down the mountain is itself a form of service, a way of opening the path for others who will follow their own calling to this hidden sanctuary when their time of need arrives. The world below spreads out before you, but you see it now with eyes that have been washed clean by perfect rest. Cities and towns that had seemed chaotic and overwhelming from your previous perspective now appear as communities of souls, each one containing individuals who are seeking the same refuge you have found. You feel drawn not away from them, but toward them, eager to discover how your transformation will manifest in service to their deepest needs. The sun rises higher as you descend, but its light seems to blend with the luminescence flowing through your own being. You have become a walking sunrise yourself, someone whose very presence offers the promise of new beginnings to those who have been trapped in the darkness of restlessness and spiritual exhaustion. The Mountain Palace has taught you that dawn is not just a time of day, but a state of consciousness, always available to those who have learned to rest deeply enough to touch their own inner light. As the path levels out and you approach the boundaries of the ordinary world, you feel the presence of the Order of Living Sanctuary all around you. Though invisible to normal perception, they form a network of support and guidance that will help you navigate your new role as a source of refuge for others. You are not alone in this work. You are part of an ancient tradition of souls who have discovered their deepest purpose in service to the universal need for sanctuary. The final steps of your mountain descent bring you to a place where the sacred path meets the road that leads back to cities and schedules and all the complexities of modern life. But you cross this threshold without anxiety, knowing that you carry within yourself everything needed to maintain your connection to the profound peace you have discovered. The Mountain Palace lives in you now, and through you it will touch countless other lives in ways both visible and hidden. You pause for one last look back at the mountain peaks rising behind you, their summits wreathed in clouds that seem to pulse with the same gentle rhythm as your transformed heartbeat. Somewhere among those heights, hidden from ordinary sight, the palace continues its ancient work of offering refuge to souls in need. New guests are even now climbing paths that will appear beneath their feet when their need is great enough and their hearts are open enough to receive the invitation. But you also know that the palace exists wherever someone who has been transformed by its peace chooses to create sanctuary for others. In hospital rooms where your presence brings comfort to the suffering. In offices where your calm demeanor helps stressed colleagues remember their own capacity for peace. In homes where your transformed energy creates spaces of refuge for family members overwhelmed by the demands of daily life. The Mountain Palace is not bound by geography. It lives wherever sanctuary is offered with genuine love and understanding. As you take your first steps on the road that leads back to your ordinary life, you feel the profound satisfaction that comes from having completed a journey that has transformed not just your own experience, but your capacity to transform the experience of others. You sought rest and found purpose. You climbed seeking healing and descended ready to heal. You entered the mountain palace as a weary traveler and emerged as a living sanctuary, ready to offer refuge to a world that desperately needs what you have become. The road ahead stretches into distances unknown, but you walk it now with the confidence of someone who carries peace as their permanent companion. Every step is blessed by the understanding that wherever this path leads, you will bring with you the capacity to create moments of profound rest for souls who have forgotten what such sanctuary feels like. The mountain palace has done its work, and now that work continues through you in ways that will ripple outward for generations to come. The road beneath your feet feels different now, not just because you're walking on packed earth instead of carved stone, but because every surface you touch responds to the sanctuary energy flowing through you. The dust doesn't cling to your clothes the way it once would have. The small stones don't bite into your soles with their usual sharpness. Even the rough patches of gravel seem to smooth themselves as you pass, as if the path itself recognizes what you've become and adjusts accordingly. Your breathing has settled into a rhythm that matches something much larger than your individual lungs. Each inhalation draws in not just oxygen, but the subtle essence of peace that permeates everything around you now that your perception has been cleansed. Each exhalation releases small clouds of tranquility that will linger in the air long after you've passed, creating invisible rest stops for birds in flight and insects seeking momentary respite from their endless activity. The first signs of human habitation appear as you round a bend in the road. A small farmhouse sits nestled in a valley, its windows catching the morning light, like eyes that have been waiting patiently for your return. Smoke rises from the chimney in spirals that seem to dance with joy, and even from this distance you can sense the presence of lives being lived within those walls. But more than that, you can feel their needs. The subtle emanations of tiredness, worry, and that particular form of exhaustion that comes from caring deeply about things beyond one's control. An elderly woman tends to a vegetable garden beside the house, her movements slow but deliberate. She looks up as you approach, and something in her expression shifts the moment her eyes meet yours. It's subtle, like a candle being lit in a room that had been just slightly too dark to navigate comfortably. Her shoulders, which had been carrying invisible weight, seemed to settle into a more natural position. The lines around her eyes soften from expressions of concern into something closer to curiosity. You offer her a simple greeting, just the kind of polite acknowledgement that passes between travelers and locals on country roads. But your voice carries undertones that weren't there before your transformation, frequencies that speak directly to the part of the human soul that remembers what safety feels like. She responds with warmth that seems to surprise even her, inviting you to share water from her well and rest in the shade of an ancient oak tree that stands guard over her property. As you accept her kindness, you become aware that this is your first opportunity to practice what you've become, not through any dramatic gestures or profound proclamations, but simply by being present in a way that creates space for her own inner peace to emerge. The conversation that unfolds is ordinary on the surface, talk of weather and crops and the small concerns of rural life. But underneath, something deeper is happening. The woman begins speaking of things she hasn't shared with anyone in years. The loneliness that settled into her bones after her husband passed. The worry that keeps her awake at night as she watches her adult children struggle with challenges she cannot solve. The way time seems to move too quickly now, carrying away pieces of the life she once knew without asking permission. But as she speaks, these burdens begin to lighten. not because you offer solutions, but because your presence creates a space where they can be held without judgment or urgency. You listen with the quality of attention you learned in the mountain palace, the kind that doesn't try to fix or advise, but simply receives what is offered with complete acceptance. Your transformed consciousness recognizes the sacred nature of this moment, how the simple act of being truly heard can restore something essential that had been gradually wearing away under the weight of isolation and unshared concern. When the time comes to continue your journey, the woman's goodbye carries a note of genuine gratitude that goes beyond appreciation for your politeness. Something has shifted in her during your brief encounter, a reminder of her own capacity for peace that had been temporarily obscured by the accumulated stress of daily survival. She watches you walk away with eyes that hold more light than they did an hour ago. The road continues through countryside that grows more populated as you descend from the mountain's influence. Other travelers begin to appear, some on foot like yourself, others in vehicles that kick up clouds of dust in their hurry to reach destinations that suddenly seem less urgent when you come into view. You notice how your presence affects the rhythm of movement around you, how the frantic energy that characterizes so much human activity begins to slow and settle when it encounters the sanctuary field you now carry. A young man on a bicycle slows as he passes, then stops entirely, claiming he needs to adjust something that seems perfectly functional. During the few minutes he spends making unnecessary repairs, his breathing deepens and his face relaxes from the mask of determination it had been wearing. He remounts and continues his journey, but at a pace that suggests he's remembered something important about the value of actually experiencing the landscape he's moving through, rather than simply trying to get past it as quickly as possible. Two children playing by the roadside pause in their game as you approach, their natural sensitivity to energy picking up on something that makes them curious rather than wary. They offer to show you a shortcut through their family's orchard, and you accept, understanding that this detour is part of the path you're meant to follow. As you walk among the fruit trees, heavy with the promise of harvest, the children's chatter gradually settles into a more contemplative rhythm. They begin pointing out things they might normally overlook: the intricate patterns in bark, the way light filters through leaves, the patient work of insects that help transform blossoms into nourishment. Their parents, working among the trees, pause in their labor as you pass. No words are exchanged beyond simple greetings, but you feel the subtle shift as their relationship with the work changes. What had been mere toil begins to reveal itself as participation in something larger and more meaningful. The ache in their backs becomes awareness of their body's participation in the ancient dance between human effort and natural abundance. The repetitive motions of picking and sorting transform from drudgery into meditation, each fruit a small offering in the ongoing conversation between earth and sky. By the time you emerge from the orchard back onto the main road, you carry with you the satisfaction that comes from witnessing transformation happen naturally, without force or manipulation. The sanctuary you've become doesn't impose itself on others, but simply creates conditions where their own innate peace can resurface and remember itself. This is the gift the Mountain Palace has given you, not the ability to heal others, but the capacity to remind them of their own wholeness. The landscape around you continues to evolve as you travel further from the mountain's direct influence. Villages appear with increasing frequency, each one a small community of souls navigating the complexities of shared existence. You find yourself drawn to places where your presence might serve some purpose, though that purpose often reveals itself only in retrospect. In one village, you pause at a small cafe where the owner serves simple food with hands that shake slightly from exhaustion and worry. Business has been slow, and you can sense the weight of responsibility he carries for employees who depend on him, and a family that needs the income his establishment provides. You order a modest meal and eat it slowly, your unhurried presence creating ripples of calm that spread through the small space. Other customers, who had been eating quickly before rushing back to their own urgent concerns, find themselves lingering over their food, rediscovering the pleasure of taste and texture and the simple satisfaction of nourishment received gratefully. Conversations that had been brief and functional extend into genuine exchanges between neighbors who had forgotten the value of connection. The owner's hands grow steadier as he serves, his movements taking on a grace that speaks of pride in craft rather than anxiety about outcomes. You pay for your meal and leave a tip that's generous without being ostentatious. But the real gift you've offered is the demonstration of how presence can transform ordinary activities into forms of communion. The cafe will continue to serve food long after you've departed, but something in its atmosphere has been permanently enriched by your visit, a quality of welcome that will attract customers seeking more than mere sustenance. The pattern repeats in various forms as you make your way through successive communities. A playground where your seated presence on a bench allows frazzled parents to remember the joy they once took in watching their children explore the world with wonder. A library where your quiet study of books creates a field of concentration that helps other patrons settle into the kind of deep reading that nourishes the soul as well as the mind. A market where your unhurried examination of goods reminds vendors and customers alike that commerce can be a form of relationship rather than mere transaction. In each instance, you do nothing dramatic or obviously healing. You simply exist in your transformed state, allowing the sanctuary you've become to interact naturally with whatever situation presents itself. The Mountain Palace taught you that healing doesn't require grand gestures or special techniques, only the willingness to be fully present with an open heart and a consciousness that has remembered its essential nature. As evening approaches, you find yourself in a larger town where the pace of life has accelerated to match urban rhythms. Here, the effects of modern stress are more apparent, visible in the way people move through streets with shoulders hunched against invisible pressures, eyes focused on destinations rather than the journey between them. The cacophony of traffic and construction and 1,000 urgent conversations creates an atmospheric tension that might once have felt overwhelming. But your transformed perception allows you to see beyond the surface chaos to the underlying patterns of need and seeking that drive so much human activity. Each person rushing past carries their own version of the exhaustion that once brought you to the Mountain Palace. Each urgent phone conversation masks a deeper longing for connection and understanding. Each grimly determined face reflects someone trying to solve problems that can't be resolved through effort alone. You make your way to a small park in the town centre, a patch of green surrounded by concrete and steel where city planners have attempted to preserve some remnant of natural peace. The space is largely empty despite the pleasant evening weather. Most people too busy or too distracted to pause in their pursuit of whatever they believe will finally provide the relief they seek. Settling onto a bench beneath a tree that has somehow survived decades of urban development, you simply sit and breathe, allowing your transformed presence to radiate outward like ripples from a stone dropped into still water. The effect is subtle at first, just a slight slowing in the pace of pedestrians who pass nearby. A momentary relaxation in the rigid postures of those walking with determined urgency toward their evening obligations. But gradually, people begin to notice the park as if seeing it for the first time. A businessman takes an unexpected detour from his usual route home, claiming he needs to make a phone call, but then spending several minutes simply standing among the trees, his conversation taking on a gentler tone. A mother with young children discovers that this small oasis offers exactly the kind of space where her family can transition from the day's activities to evening rest, the children's energy settling into play that nourishes rather than exhausts. An elderly man who walks this way every evening but usually passes without stopping finds himself drawn to sit on a bench near yours, not close enough for conversation, but within the field of peace your presence creates. He pulls out a book he's been carrying for weeks without finding time to read, and for the first time in months manages to lose himself in its pages, remembering what it feels like to engage with ideas for pure pleasure rather than professional necessity. As darkness settles over the town, the park becomes an unlikely sanctuary, a place where the artificial urgency that drives so much urban life gives way to rhythms more aligned with human nature. People who had forgotten the restorative power of simply sitting still rediscover the practice, creating a temporary community of souls, taking refuge from the relentless demands of modern existence. You remain on your bench as this quiet transformation unfolds around you, understanding that this too is part of the work you've been prepared to do. Not all sanctuary happens in hidden mountain palaces or dramatic moments of revelation. Much of it occurs in the simple act of creating spaces where people can remember what it feels like to breathe deeply, to notice beauty that exists without purpose, to rest without guilt. The night deepens, and gradually the impromptu gathering disperses as people return to homes and families and the evening portions of their daily routines. But something has shifted in the town's energy, a subtle relaxation that will ripple outward in ways both visible and invisible. Children will sleep more peacefully tonight. Parents will find patience they thought they'd lost. Workers will wake tomorrow slightly less burdened by the weight of problems that seemed insurmountable just hours ago. You rise from the bench as the park empties, knowing that your work here is complete, but that the effects will continue long after your departure. This is the nature of sanctuary made manifest. It doesn't depend on your continued presence, but becomes a quality of the space itself, available to anyone who needs refuge from the storm of modern life. Walking through the quieter evening streets, you become aware of how the town's entire atmosphere has shifted, becoming more conducive to rest and reflection. Lights in windows seem warmer, conversations on sidewalks carry gentler tones, even the traffic moves with less aggressive urgency. The sanctuary you've become has created ripples of transformation that extend far beyond your direct interactions, touching lives in ways you may never fully know but can sense through the subtle changes in the collective energy. Your path leads you to the edge of town, where buildings give way to open countryside once again. But you understand now that every step of your journey serves a purpose, that the road itself has become a vehicle for sharing the peace you discovered in the mountain palace. Whether you're walking through wilderness or urban landscape, rural communities or bustling cities, you carry with you the capacity to create moments of refuge for souls who have forgotten what sanctuary feels like. The stars emerge as you leave the town's lights behind, and you recognize in their ancient patterns the same cosmic order that governed the impossible ceiling of your chamber in the mountain palace. But now you understand that you're not separate from that celestial dance. You're a participant in it, a point of conscious light moving through the landscape of human experience with the specific purpose of offering rest to those who need it most. The road ahead stretches into darkness, but you walk it with the confidence of someone who has found their true calling. Every step carries you toward encounters that haven't happened yet, but are already being prepared by the mysterious intelligence that guides seekers to sanctuary and sanctuary to seekers. You are no longer traveling toward a destination. You have become a destination yourself, a walking refuge for souls still searching for the peace you found and integrated so completely that it now flows through you like breath itself. The horizon begins to lighten with the first hints of dawn as you continue along the country road. But this isn't the harsh fluorescent awakening of alarm clocks and obligations. This is dawn as it was meant to be experienced, a gradual invitation back into the world of form and movement that honors the sacred transition from rest to activity. Your transformed body moves with a rhythm that matches the earth's own breathing, each footfall creating small blessings in the dust that will nourish seeds waiting in the soil for exactly the right conditions to sprout. A convoy of trucks rumbles past, their drivers pushing through the night to meet deadlines that feel less crushing now that they've passed through the field of peace you carry. One driver slows his massive rig, pulling over to offer you a ride. His face, weathered by years of long hauls and short sleeps, shows the particular exhaustion that comes from a life spent always moving toward the next destination, without ever quite arriving anywhere that feels like home. You accept his kindness, settling into the passenger seat of his cab, and immediately the confined space transforms into something approaching a mobile sanctuary. The driver's grip on the steering wheel relaxes, his shoulders dropping from their defensive position around his ears. The radio, which had been blaring aggressive music to keep him alert, finds its way to a station playing something softer, more conducive to the kind of focused calm that makes long drives meditative rather than merely enduring. Miles pass in comfortable silence punctuated by conversation that moves naturally from surface pleasantries to deeper revelations. He speaks of the loneliness of the road, the way constant motion can become a form of running away from problems that follow you regardless of geography. But as he talks, something begins to shift in his relationship with his solitude. The cab begins to feel less like a prison and more like a retreat, the highway less like an endless sentence and more like a path with its own mysterious purpose. When he drops you off at a crossroads where your paths naturally diverge, his goodbye carries genuine gratitude for more than just the company. Something has been restored in him during those hours of shared travel, a memory of what it feels like to be truly seen and heard without judgment. He drives away with posture that suggests he's remembering something important about the sacred nature of the work he does, carrying goods and stories and moments of connection across the vast network of roads that bind communities together. The crossroads where you stand offers multiple directions, each one leading toward different communities and different opportunities to serve as sanctuary for souls in need. But you don't choose your path through analysis or planning. Instead, you allow yourself to be guided by the same mysterious intelligence that first called you to the mountain palace, trusting that the right direction will reveal itself through the subtle pull you feel toward whatever needs your particular form of presence most urgently. Your feet turn toward a road that leads through countryside dotted with small farms and rural communities, places where the pace of life still allows for the kind of deep rest that cities have largely forgotten how to provide. The morning sun climbs higher, warming your back and casting your shadow ahead of you like an advanced scout, preparing the way for encounters that will unfold according to timing more precise than any human schedule could achieve. A school bus passes, filled with children whose energy typically runs at frequencies that exhaust the adults responsible for channeling it toward learning. But as the bus moves through your presence, something remarkable happens. The chaos inside settles into something more manageable, not through suppression, but through a natural finding of rhythm. Children who had been fighting over seats discover the pleasure of looking out windows at landscape they usually ignore. Those who had been shouting find themselves drawn into conversations that actually exchange ideas rather than just noise. The bus driver, a woman whose patience has been worn thin by years of managing mobile mayhem twice a day, feels her grip on the steering wheel relax. The constant low-level anxiety that comes from being responsible for dozens of other people's children begins to transform into something approaching the satisfaction teachers feel when they witness learning happen naturally. By the time the bus disappears around a bend in the road, it carries with it a quality of peace that will make both the school day and the eventual trip home more conducive to the kind of growth that happens when children feel safe enough to be curious rather than defensive. Your journey continues through a landscape that seems to respond to your transformed presence by revealing its own inherent beauty more clearly. Colors appear more vivid without becoming overwhelming. The songs of birds create harmonies that speak to something deeper than your ears. Even the weeds growing along the roadside arrange themselves into patterns that suggest intentional design rather than random growth, as if the very plants are participating in the creation of sanctuary space. A small church comes into view, its simple wooden structure surrounded by a cemetery, where generations of the local community rest beneath stones that tell stories of lives lived with varying degrees of peace and struggle. The building shows signs of loving maintenance despite limited resources, the kind of care that speaks of faith sustained through difficult seasons by people who understand the importance of preserving spaces dedicated to the sacred. The pastor emerges from the church as you approach, a man whose face carries the particular weariness that comes from trying to offer hope to people whose problems seem to outweigh their capacity for solutions. He's preparing for a funeral service, the third this month in a community already depleted by economic hardship and the migration of young people toward opportunities that seem to exist only in distant cities. Your presence as you pause to appreciate the simple beauty of the church creates ripples that reach him before your greeting does. The weight he carries, the accumulated grief of shepherding a flock through losses that feel relentless, begins to lighten without any specific intervention on your part. His preparation for the service takes on a different quality, less focused on finding words to explain the unexplainable, and more connected to the deeper currents of comfort that flow through communities when they're aligned with something larger than their immediate circumstances. The conversation that develops is brief but profound, touching on the challenges of maintaining faith when evidence for despair seems overwhelming. But as you speak, your words carry frequencies that remind him of why he chose this calling in the first place. The moments of grace that appear when human effort stops trying to control outcomes and instead creates space for something larger to work through willing vessels. When the time comes for you to continue your journey, he stands watching from the church steps with posture that suggests he's remembered something essential about the nature of his work. The funeral service he's about to conduct will carry a different energy now, one that acknowledges loss while also celebrating the mysterious continuity that connects all life in patterns too vast for individual comprehension, but available to hearts that have learned to rest deeply enough to sense their participation in something eternal. The road carries you next through a small town, where the main street shows signs of the economic struggles that have challenged rural communities throughout the region. Empty storefronts alternate with businesses that remain open through determination and community loyalty, rather than financial prosperity. But your presence, as you walk through this struggling commercial district, creates subtle shifts that suggest possibilities for renewal that don't depend entirely on external economic forces. A cafe owner sweeping the sidewalk in front of his establishment pauses in his work as you pass. Not because anything dramatic happens, but because something in the quality of the morning light seems to shift, making his simple storefront appear more inviting than it had moments before. The act of sweeping, which had been mere maintenance, transforms into a form of care that extends beyond the physical surface to include the intangible atmosphere that determines whether a place feels welcoming or merely functional. Customers who'd been planning quick stops for coffee to fuel their hurried commutes find themselves lingering over conversations that nourish something deeper than their need for caffeine. A businessman checking urgent messages on his phone discovers that the problems that had seemed so critical can wait a few more minutes, while he actually tastes his breakfast and exchanges genuine pleasantries with neighbors he usually acknowledges with only distracted nods. Two elderly women sharing a table by the window begin reminiscing about the town's more prosperous past, but their conversation takes on qualities of celebration rather than mourning. They remember not just what has been lost, but what endures. The networks of relationship and mutual support that persist regardless of economic fluctuations. The beauty that exists in landscapes and community connections that can't be quantified in financial terms. The ripples of transformation continue to spread as you move through the town's modest business district. A hardware store owner finds himself taking extra time to help customers understand not just what they need to buy, but how to approach their projects with the kind of patience that makes work satisfying rather than merely necessary. A librarian arranging books discovers renewed appreciation for her role as keeper of stories and knowledge, understanding that her work creates sanctuary for minds seeking refuge from the overwhelming flood of information that characterizes modern life. At the town's small medical clinic, a nurse practitioner preparing for a day of treating ailments that often stem from stress and exhaustion feels her own energy shift toward the kind of presence that heals through quality of attention as much as through medical intervention. Her patients today will receive not just treatment for their symptoms, but the deeper medicine that comes from being seen and heard. by someone whose professional skills are enhanced by genuine compassion. The elementary school you pass shows signs of the challenges facing rural education, but your presence creates a field effect that reaches into classrooms where teachers are struggling to maintain enthusiasm in the face of limited resources and increasing demands. Children who had been restless and distracted find themselves more able to focus on lessons that suddenly seem more relevant to their actual lives. Teachers rediscover the satisfaction that originally drew them to education, the joy of witnessing young minds make connections that transform information into understanding. Even the town's small police station is touched by the sanctuary energy you carry. Officers who had been feeling overwhelmed by social problems, too complex for law enforcement solutions, begin to remember aspects of their work that focus on protection and service rather than merely control and punishment. Their interactions with community members throughout the day will carry undertones of respect and genuine care that help build trust rather than simply maintaining order through authority. As you reach the far edge of town, you pause at a small park where a memorial honors local residents who served in various military conflicts. The names carved in granite represent stories of sacrifice and service, but also of trauma and loss that rippled through families and community networks in ways that official histories rarely capture. Your presence at this site of remembrance creates space for healing that extends beyond individual veterans to include the collective wounds carried by communities that have sent their young people to fight in distant conflicts. The memorial transforms from mere monument to active place of healing, preparing to offer comfort to visitors who come seeking connection with loved ones, whose service cost them more than they initially understood they were giving. Veterans struggling with invisible injuries will find this space more conducive to the kind of remembrance that honors sacrifice without romanticizing trauma, creating possibilities for integration rather than perpetual struggle with memories that resist simple categorization as either heroic or tragic. Your path leads away from the town through countryside that grows more wild and less cultivated with each mile. The domesticated landscape of farms and orchards gives way to forests and meadows that follow rhythms older than human settlement, places where the Earth's own capacity for renewal becomes visible in the constant cycles of growth, death, and rebirth that characterize natural systems undisturbed by excessive human intervention. As you stand at the edge of the wilderness where ancient forests hold secrets older than memory, you understand that your journey has come full circle. The mountain palace that transformed you exists now not just as a distant sanctuary carved from stone, but as a living reality within your own being. Every breath carries its peace. Every heartbeat pulses with its sacred rhythm. You are no longer someone who seeks refuge. You have become refuge itself, walking sanctuary for a world that has forgotten what true rest feels like. Tonight, when you close your eyes, remember that the palace waits within you always, and through you, its ancient gift of perfect peace continues to heal the world.